UN logo.
Based on the information we received, and mainly based on the information we got through the interviews and other sources, we documented extensive human rights violations in the context of the countrywide protests that started on 1st of April. Allow me to briefly go over the main human rights violations that are documented in the report. First, excessive use of force. Credible and consistent accounts of victims and witnesses indicate that security forces systematically used excessive force to deter demonstrations, crush dissent, and instill fear. Less lethal weapons were not used according to international human rights standards. We also documented the use of lethal force against protesters by security forces.
And then I have another one. You speak about forced disappearances, several cases, but
we documented several abuses, including killings, by pro-government armed groups called armed colectivos. These groups could be responsible, in our estimates, for at least 27 deaths in the context of the protests. And according to the accounts we received, again, several consistent accounts, they operated without interference by, and sometimes in coordination with, the security forces. The report also includes information about violence and abuses by anti-government protesters. According to our estimates, at least 4 people died at the hands of violent anti-government protesters.
As of July 31st?
Yes. The authorities, we believe, have responded to the demonstrations with repression, a repression that has taken the form of extensive human rights violations and which, in our view, point to the existence of a policy to crush dissent and instill fear in the population with the intention of curbing these demonstrations.
Giving us that summary. So we can take questions now, and as per usual, if you could just identify your media organisation.
On whether the measures to crush dissent and instill fear have been successful, I would say they have, but it's not me saying this, it's the victims we interviewed saying they, after many of the violations they suffered, the violent house raids and the detentions, the ill treatment, they all have told us, or the large majority of them have told us, that they don't dare to demonstrate anymore. They are afraid.
The government must ensure there are prompt, independent, and effective investigations of the human rights violations allegedly committed by the security forces and of the abuses involving armed collectivos or violent protesters. This includes ensuring that the investigations initiated by the Attorney General during the period covered by this report continue and are scrupulously and visibly impartial.
How do you assess its contribution to this situation, and do you think there are other measures that are required?